Shadows of Evil is one of the greatest zombie maps ever made, full stop. That is a fact, that is a law. Have a good night. But what if I told you that that wasn't always the case? Or at least that fans didn't always consider it an all-time best map? Shadows of Evil has had a very strange progression over the years, in the sense that fans' opinions of the map have kind of been all over the place. Shadows of Evil wasn't always the fan-favorite masterpiece it is considered to be today. At the launch of Black Ops 3, it seemed like a lot of players weren't giving the map the time of day, so to speak. As in, players weren't taking the time to truly explore the map, discover its secrets, understand the story, or complete the Easter egg. That's not to say that all players felt this way. In fact, many players thoroughly enjoyed the map at launch. But in this video, I want to go over the facts with you as to why Shadows of Evil was a grower, not a shower. So grab some snacks, sit back, and relax as I delve into the history of Shadows of Evil and how it eventually became a cult classic zombies map. Before the video starts, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for the support you showed my previous video on the map Mob of the Dead. I did not expect that video to receive the response that it did, so I'll take this moment now to ask you once again to click the like button. I put my soul into these videos, so a like would mean the world. And subscribe to be notified about future videos and live streams. On November 6th, 2015, Call of Duty Black Ops 3 was released to the world. Black Ops 3 now is considered an all-time Call of Duty title, as in a lot of people consider this game to be in their top 10 or even top 5 Call of Duty games. However, Black Ops 3 had a really strange launch. You see, Black Ops 3 was the first Call of Duty to have a beta release. Now betas are expected from new Call of Duty releases. It's typical for the studios to announce that a closed beta would be in effect a couple of months before the release of the game. But at this point in time, a beta for a Call of Duty title, much less a console title, was unheard of. A closed beta was made available for people who had pre-ordered the game, followed by an open beta that was then available for all players. It's also worth noting that this was the first Call of Duty game that was signed under a Sony deal. Thus, the betas were made available to PlayStation 4 players first, and then all platforms the week after. This was also in a time of quarterly DLC releases, and typically these DLCs would release up to a month early on the platform that had a deal with Activision. This was Microsoft and Xbox for many years, until Activision decided to sign a deal with Sony and the PlayStation instead. I'm very glad that we're past these days. Sure, exclusives still exist, but exclusive DLC and timed exclusive DLC just made players bitter, but that's beside the point. Black Ops 3 was also released in a post-Advanced Warfare world. Advanced Warfare, even at the time, is considered one of the worst Call of Duty games ever made because of its change in movement and addition of loot boxes. A change that would not only impact the Call of Duty franchise, but the gaming industry as a whole. Black Ops 3 was a Treyarch Studios game, and was guaranteed to have a zombie mode. So if you were like me, the first thing you did after popping in the disc was go to the Zombies mode and play the brand new zombie map. Now, Black Ops 3 had a similar infrastructure as Black Ops 2. That is to say that Black Ops 3 launched with 2 zombie maps. However, one of them was locked behind a paywall, much like Nuketown Zombies from Black Ops 2. And much like Nuketown Zombies, the paywall that the map was locked behind was the Season Pass. Regardless of my opinion about this situation, the second map that Black Ops 3 launched with was The Giant, a remaster of the World at War classic Der Riese. The Giant is a stunning map. Not only was the map running on the new Black Ops 3 engine, on an at the time next-gen console, making it look stunning as is, but Blundell decided to make the map based during the winter. Much more bluish and colder tones are pulled into the color scheme. Snowflakes are falling from the sky, adding to the atmosphere. Needless to say, The Giant was and still is an extremely good-looking map. Now, why do I bring this all up? You see, Shadows of Evil was the launch map for Black Ops 3, and The Giant was the bonus map. However, it seemed as though most people were instead playing the giant more. Don't get me wrong, content creators like Mr. T Lexify and NoahJ456 were making videos about the map, hunting for Easter eggs and making tutorials and guides, and their videos were performing quite well. However, it still seemed like most people were playing the giant more than Shadows of Evil. Years later, Mr. T Lexify admitted that at the launch of Black Ops 3, most of his time was spent playing the giant. I think he said this in a live stream or a video, but when I heard this, I then asked my close friends what map they spent the most time playing, and their reply was the same. They had spent most of their time playing the giant as well. They explained to me that Shadows of Evil was a cool map, but I just enjoyed playing the giant more. Further digging had shown me that most of the people I knew played the giant more, because it was better for casual fun, and that Shadows of Evil required too much setup to enjoy. Shadows of Evil brought a very different tone to Call of Duty Zombies. The zombie mode had always been about darkness, horror, and metal. Shadows of Evil stepped away from all of these themes and took a different direction. Shadows still maintains a slight theme of horror, being extremely inspired by the writings of H.P. Lovecraft. But where Shadows begins to differ is in its choice of music. Music can completely change the tone of a story you're trying to tell. In zombie maps previous, there had always been a sense of metal throughout the mode. Menu music is metal, Easter egg songs are metal, round changing music is metal, and ranking up music is metal too. Shadows decided to step into the realm of swing and jazz instead. This choice is genius. Jazz and swing music fit the map's tone so much better. It also makes sense given that Morgue City, the location where the map is based, is a take on an alternate version of New Orleans, Louisiana, and New Orleans is known as the City of Jazz. Also, the idea to base the map on an alternate version of New Orleans in the 1940s is such a cool idea. Blundell is very good at building zombie maps in a location and era that you had never thought about before, like Mob of the Dead during the Prohibition era in Alcatraz prison, or Origins in the trenches of France during World War I. The tone of Shadows is such a breath of fresh air, and stands to this day as one of the most original and unique zombie maps. Much like Blundell did with Mob of the Dead, he also brings some new, innovative features that help to set the map apart from any other and bring fresh gameplay to the mode. Around the map, there can be found these Margwa Heads. What is a Margwa? We're getting there. These Margwa Heads are plants that can be opened using the Fumigator. The Fumigator is a tool that can be found on the map that fumigates the Margwa Heads, causing them to open and provide you with a gift. Many things can be found by opening the Margwa Heads. A few different weapons, any one of the various power-ups, and sometimes you can even receive the ray gun wonder weapon. But what you're really looking for is the Apothicon Servant part. What is the Apothicon Servant? The Apothicon Servant is the new wonder weapon of the map. It is an alien-like creature that you literally shove your arm into and fire out what is essentially a black hole that sucks in all enemies, instantly killing them. Many consider this to be one of the most powerful wonder weapons ever put into zombies, and because it's so powerful, it does not come with a lot of reserve ammo. This makes sense, given that there needs to be a balance between being overpowered and vulnerable. But overall, the Apothicon Servant is easily one of the most powerful wonder weapons ever made. Shadows of Evil also has a buildable shield. The shield was first introduced in the map Transit, was refined in Mob of the Dead, and perfected in Origins. Shadows, however, would take the shield and innovate upon it even more. This iteration of the shield would be known as the Rocket Shield. The Rocket Shield does what the name describes it as. It has a rocket attached, allowing you to propel yourself into a horde of zombies, knocking them out of the way or killing them. The shield also has an upgrade path, allowing the shield to hit harder and kill faster. The unfortunate part about the upgraded shield is that its durability remains the same, and when the shield breaks, it's gone forever. You can theoretically upgrade another shield, but given that the shield will most likely remain on your back to protect you from attacks from behind, it would only be a waste of time to do so. The rocket shield is great, but because of its useless upgrade path, it is unfortunately the weakest part of the map. However, the fact that a shield, an optional weapon that isn't required for any part of the Easter egg and is only useful if you want it to be useful, is the weakest part of the map says a lot about the quality of the map. Shadows of Evil also introduced a utility that has since been recognized as one of the most innovative features in zombies history, yet was never introduced into the future zombie maps until Mauer der Toten in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I of course am talking about the Civil Protector. The Civil Protector is a robot that assists you in fighting off the hordes of the undead. He can be activated by finding 3 fuses throughout the map, one in a different district of Morgue City. Upon finding all 3 fuses, you would then need to go below Morgue City. In each district, a portal can be opened that takes you below the city to an old abandoned tram station. Here is where Pack-a-Punch can be found, but more on that later. If you place the 3 fuses into the fuse box down here, the Civil Protector can then be summoned and protect you from many enemies that can be found here in Morgue City. The Civil Protector can also revive you in solo and does not use a quick revive. We all know that you can only buy quick revive 3 times in solo, so the fact that the Civil Protector can be used to avoid wasting one of your 3 quick revives is huge. Just another incredible idea, adding to the innovation that Shadows of Evil brought to the zombie mode. Let's back up for a minute and take a look at that old abandoned tram station I was talking about earlier. In Morgue City, a tram can be used to make your way around the map. The tram is ultimately the successor to the bus from transit. The tram doesn't really find its usefulness through traveling around the map, however, because just running around the map honestly isn't that annoying, and while the tram might get you to a different district in a slightly faster manner, you would be able to save yourself 500 points, which could be the difference between buying Juggernog or Pack-a-Punching. However, the tram does have another use. Hidden in buildings up high are 3 different symbols. These symbols are different every single time you play Shadows of Evil, and the only way to be able to see them is by taking the tram from district to district. Once you have discovered what the 3 symbols are, you will need to go down below Morgue City to the abandoned tram station and enter these symbols into the wall. This will give you an egg. The player must then take the egg to 4 different ritual locations, 1 in each district. Once the egg is placed, the player will then have to kill between 10 and 12 zombies to fill the egg with enough souls. The player will need to do this for all 4 ritual locations, and once completed, the player will then need to return the egg to its original location, and the player will then receive the second wonder weapon on the map, the Apothicon Sword. The Apothicon Sword acts as an ability weapon. It can be activated by pressing both bumper buttons on your controller. It has 2 different attacks, either a standard attack or a heavy attack, lunging the player forward and slamming the sword to the ground. As is, the sword is okay, but it can be upgraded into the Reborn Sword or the Keeper Sword. To do this, you will need to go to the district your character is associated with. If the player is Jessica, they must go to the Black Lace Burlesque in the Footlight district. If the player is Campbell, they must go to the Anvil Boxing Gym in the Waterfront district. If the player is Vincent, they must go to the Ruby Rabbit in the Canals district. And if the player is Nero, they must take the sword to Nero's Landing, just above the spawn area. Once in the player's respective location, a keeper will be there waiting for you. The keeper will give the player an egg known as the Arch-Ovum. The player must then again take the Arch-Ovum to 4 different ritual locations, 1 in each district. The player must place the Arch-Ovum down on these ritual sites, after which a single Margwa will spawn. Now, before we continue, it has come to my attention that I have failed to explain the new enemy types that can be found on the map. 3 new enemy types were introduced into Shadows of Evil. First is the Parasites. Parasites have their own dedicated round, much like Hellhounds in previous zombie maps. The Parasites fly around and attack the player by spitting acid at them, and slightly impairing the player's vision. Second is the Insanity Elementals, known by the community as the Meatballs. Meatballs can also have their own dedicated bonus round, dropping a max ammo power-up upon the completion of the round. They roll around the map and attack you by exploding upon impact. And finally is the Margwa. Margwas spawn randomly, much like Brutus in Mob of the Dead. They are very large creatures carrying 3 heads and tentacles for legs and arms. The only way to kill them is by shooting the head with an open mouth, adding a bit of challenge like a mini boss fight. If you do not have the perk Juggernog, they can kill you in a single hit, and are considered extremely dangerous. So now that we have established the new enemy types, let's hop back over to those rituals I was talking about. Upon placing down the Arch-Ovum, a Margwa will spawn. The player must kill the Margwa to complete the ritual, and upon completion the player can then pick up the Arch-Ovum again. Only one ritual can be completed per round, so the player must wait until the next round before placing the Arch-Ovum down on the next ritual site. Things change after the first ritual, however. This ritual, as well as the third, will spawn 2 Margwas, increasing the challenge exponentially, and on the fourth and final ritual, will spawn 3 Margwa. Upon the completion of all 4 rituals, the player must then bring the Arch-Ovum back to the location they originally received it from, depending on which character they are playing as. The player gives the Keeper the Arch-Ovum and Apothicon Sword, and receives the much more improved Keeper Sword. The Keeper Sword's primary attack remains the same, but its secondary attack allows the sword to float and attack any nearby enemies by itself. Similar to the Civil Protector, not as overpowered, but accessible at any given time and for free, making the entire upgrade process worth the effort. It's an interesting idea from Jason Blundell to make the player get access to the Apothicon Sword upgrade by going to the district tied to whatever character the player is playing. This allows the map to have a lot of replayability, because every single time you play the map will be a vastly different experience. You will need to start the upgrading process from a different location each game, which could entice you to start the first ritual in a different location, which could provide you with a new way of playing the map, giving you an entirely new experience. Speaking of characters, Jason Blundell did something very interesting for the first map of Black Ops 3. He made it an Of the Dead map. If you don't know what an Of the Dead map is, we went over it in my previous essay about Mob of the Dead, but here is a quick breakdown. An Of the Dead map is a map that doesn't star the main cast of characters established as being part of the main storyline of the game. There had been 2 Of the Dead maps before Shadows of Evil, Call of the Dead and Mob of the Dead. What makes Shadows of Evil so different is that Of the Dead isn't in the map's title, which had been a standard for the Of the Dead maps previously. Instead, Blundell chose to title the map Shadows of Evil. The name fits the map perfectly. Morgue City is a dark place covered in shadows. The main villain of the map is the Shadow Man. All enemies are clearly evil, and above all, the main villain is evil, which is not expected at the beginning of the map. The Shadow Man is asking the crew to help set him free, deceiving our characters into believing that he means to do good. Ultimately, in the end, he proves himself to be nothing of the sort. So the title Shadows of Evil fits the map to a T. But given that the map is an Of the Dead map by definition, let's break down our crew and the characters who portray them. The story goes that the Shadow Man is able to bring together these 4 characters by blackmailing them, letting them know that he knows their dirty secrets. Nero Blackstone is a magician who killed his wife in a staged accident while performing a trick to claim the insurance money. Jessica Rose is a burlesque dancer who was caught having an affair and killed her lover to hide the evidence. Jack Vincent is a crooked police officer who killed all of his criminal associates to make sure that they didn't rat him out. And Floyd Campbell is a boxer who, to impress his promoter, wore brass knuckles to ensure he won his fight, killing his opponent in the process. All 4 of these characters are very interesting in their own right, but the actors portraying these characters are what truly bring these characters to life. Heather Rose from Boogie Nights and Lost in Space plays Jessica Rose. Neil McDonough from Minority Report plays Jack Vincent. Ron Perlman from Hellboy and Sons of Anarchy plays Floyd Campbell. And Jeff freaking Goldblum from Jurassic Park, The Fly, Independence Day, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Thor Ragnarok, and many more plays Nero Blackstone. This cast is stacked with heavy hitters. Jason Blundell knows how to pick an all-star cast. He also knows how to innovate properly. In the past, Pack-a-Punch has never been as easy as accessing it right off rip. In Derice, you had to activate the teleporters. In Ascension, you had to use all of the lunar landers. In Transit, you had to build the turbine, place it at the power station, run all the way over to town, use a grenade to blow open the vault, and hope that a zombie didn't destroy your turbine, but it probably did, so now we have to run all the way back to spawn to get a new turbine, run all the way over to the power station, fight out the denizens, place down a turbine again, protect it from zombies, run all the way back over the town, enter the vault, go downstairs, build the Pack-a-Punch machine. Transit is a mess. Shadows of Evil is no different, but it does require a little more from you. In every district is a location relating to each of the 4 characters. The player would need to go to each of these locations and begin a ritual. The ritual only requires that you survive a short amount of time while a human is sacrificed. After the ritual is complete, the player will receive a gateworm. Collect all 4 gateworms and place them on the 4 podiums in the abandoned tram station to begin one final ritual that again only requires you to survive a short amount of time. And once this is complete, the player finally has access to Pack-a-Punch. This is one of the most complicated Pack-a-Punch quests ever put into zombies at this point. And for someone new to zombies, or someone who prefers a more casual experience, this quest could be a little much for some players, but more on that later. Shadows of Evil also introduced a new perk, Widow's Wine. Widow's Wine has 4 different abilities. Zombies that attack the player will be frozen with spiderwebs and take damage over time, either until they die or break free. The player's grenades are replaced with sticky spiderweb grenades that deal the same effect as if the zombie were to hit the player. The player can be hit as many times as the amount of grenades the player has, up to 4. The player's knife deals extra damage and has a chance to hold a zombie with the same sticky trap, as mentioned twice before. Widow's Wine is considered to be one of the most powerful perks ever put into the game. When paired with Juggernog, the player can be hit up to 9 times before going down. Shadows of Evil has so much to offer that I could spend nearly an hour just talking about its features, capabilities, and innovations. But allow me to just talk about one last feature the map offers, and it might just be its most important. Much like Mob of the Dead's Afterlife system, Shadows of Evil introduced us to the Beast Mode system. Beast Mode works in a very similar fashion to the Afterlife system. Around the map are these ritualistic flames. If interacted with, the player will then enter Beast Mode. In Beast Mode, the player can then interact with items, portals, secrets, activate perks, open doors, and much more. To gain access to every single point of interest on the map, such as the 4 locations relating to each of the 4 characters, requires Beast Mode. To turn on perks requires Beast Mode. To open portals to Pack-a-Punch requires Beast Mode. To gain access to the eggs required for the Apothicon Sword requires Beast Mode. Beast Mode is mandatory to gain access to most of the map, and to set up some other parts of the Easter egg, or just simple wonder weapon parts. What separates Beast Mode from the Afterlife system, however, is the fact that Beast Mode does not replace Quick Revive. Quick Revive stays its own perk, and Beast Mode is instead used as a way to access inaccessible areas, open doors, etc. Beast Mode is proof that Jason Blundell can take even his own creations and innovate upon them, such as he did with taking the Afterlife system and making it work the same functionally, but completely different applicably. The story, the design, the layout, the theme, the characters, the Easter egg, the music, the creatures, the innovation, and everything else about this map make it objectively almost a perfect map. Whether your personal opinions about this map are negative or positive, objectively this map is almost flawless. So how come people didn't like it at launch? As mentioned at the beginning of the video, Shadows of Evil wasn't the only map to launch with Black Ops 3. The Giant was also made available for Season Pass owners. The Giant is an incredible map because Doris is an incredible map. Releasing 2 maps at launch is a great idea. You have more than enough content to last you until next quarter when the next DLC releases. You have options, and options are always good. However, what ultimately ended up happening was players were playing the Giant far more than they were playing Shadows of Evil. Shadows of Evil was an extremely bold, complicated new idea. It introduced many new features and systems, such as alternate ammo types, Margwas, parasites, and meatballs, a new complicated way to unlock Pack-a-Punch, and many other new features that felt overwhelming to new and seasoned players alike. Shadows of Evil was and still is a complicated map. Of course, if you've played the map 5, 10, 20, 50, or 100 times, you would be well versed as to how to play the map, and where all the parts are, how to open Pack-a-Punch, and everything else the map has to offer. But imagine for a second that it's your first time playing Shadows of Evil. You have no idea where you are, what's going on, where to go, what to do, or what planet you're even on. Of course, that's the whole point, to explore and discover. But when the Giant is also available to play, an easier, simpler map that almost, if not all players are already familiar with, why wouldn't you just play that? And that is exactly what most players did. Sure, you could call it a skill issue, but that wasn't the problem. If given enough time to play and explore and learn the map, any player could get good enough to have Pack-a-Punch open in less than 10 minutes. The problem was that the Giant was made available alongside Shadows of Evil, and so most players just chose to play that map instead. The Giant is one of the best remastered maps ever made for Call of Duty Zombies, and so it launching alongside Shadows of Evil, the main new map for the game, actually hurt Shadows of Evil's success. To this day, Shadows of Evil is one of the most underrated maps ever made, and all of the blame is on the Giant. Looking back, most people can acknowledge that Shadows is a good map, a great map even. But at the time, a lot of people did not give the map the attention that it deserved. It seems like most people just found Shadows of Evil too difficult. And that's not to say that difficult maps never receive the attention they deserve because of their difficulty. Look at Mob of the Dead, Origins, or Gorod Krovi. All of these maps are not easy by any definition of the word, but all are acknowledged as being top-tier maps. Shadows of Evil can be grouped in with these maps as being difficult in its own right, but Shadows had even more weight to bear. Shadows launched on a brand new game that introduced many new features that were a little overwhelming to understand at first. The before-mentioned apps didn't have this issue, because Mob of the Dead and Origins were released as later DLCs, at a time when players already understood the game mechanics, the movement, and everything else gameplay related. Gorod Krovi also had this experience. Players had already been very familiar with the gameplay mechanics of Black Ops 3 for many months, but Shadows of Evil was the first map introducing players to Black Ops 3 zombies, and as mentioned earlier, Shadows is not an easy map by any means. Imagine for a moment that Origins launched with Black Ops 3 instead. Origins is considered one of the most complicated maps to have ever been made, far more complicated than Shadows of Evil. If Origins had launched with Black Ops 3 alongside the Giant, I think Origins would probably be in the same situation I consider Shadows to be in. You would have this community of hardcore fans playing the map, learning it, understanding the robot cycle, and learning the staff builds and upgrades. But I believe that most of the community probably would have looked at Origins and said, "That is way too complicated for me. I'm just gonna play the Giant. Thanks." Maybe that wouldn't have been the case because it's freaking Origins, but I think that is still a valid point. Shadows of Evil suffered because the Giant launched alongside it. Now, looking back, I wouldn't have changed a thing, because launching the Giant with Shadows of Evil overall was a very wise decision. You are given the community options, which is always a positive. Two varying options that serve their purpose. One map to appease the hardcore community, and another map to appease the casual community, both of which are very important. The casual community being the folks that Treyarch and Activision want to appease the most. To me, Shadows of Evil is objectively one of the most unique and well-crafted maps ever made, but I still believe it to be quite underrated to this day. Most people talk about Der Eisendrache, Origins, and Kino der Toten. I even find that Die Rise is talked about more than Shadows of Evil, which blows my mind. The conversation about Die Rise, whether it be positive or negative, is still huge to this day, overshadowing the conversation of how absolutely underrated Shadows actually is. If you played Black Ops 3 at launch, and you recall playing zombies, what map were you playing the most? I recall playing Black Ops 3 Zombies for the very first time. I remember starting up Shadows of Evil, being very confused and very overwhelmed. I played around a bit, died at like round 6, and switched to playing the Giant. That's not to say that everyone had the same experience as me, but some of my friends recall having very similar experiences. Years later, Shadows is regarded as one of the best maps ever made, finally receiving the recognition that it deserves. But at its birth, on November 6th, 2015, it had a rocky start. Personally, Shadows of Evil is my second favorite map of all time. However, I am very guilty of disregarding it at launch. When Der Eisendrache was released, it took the community by storm, and it was all everyone was playing. And as future DLCs released, everyone just forgot about Shadows of Evil. Then, like I say, years later, it finally received the praise it was deserving of. Shadows of Evil is objectively one of the greatest zombie maps ever made, but it still, to this day, is considered an underrated classic. And I hope that one day we will see another map with such a design, with such incredible ideas such as the Margwa mini-boss, or having to use a vehicle like the Tram to discover Easter egg steps, or a cast so good as this one, considering that modern zombies have gotten rid of the cast in place of operators to sell skins. The truth is, I don't think we will ever see a zombie map as unique as Shadows of Evil ever again, and that breaks my heart. However, we do have Shadows as is. And as it is, it's a pretty dang good map. If you have never played Shadows of Evil before, or if you disregarded it as I had at launch, I encourage you to give it a shot. If you take the time to learn the map, to understand how it operates and how it plays, I hope that you will begin to feel the same way I feel about this classic, Shadows of Evil, the most unique zombie map ever made.